Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. You probably know from the ABBA song that at Waterloo, Napoleon did surrender. But actually, before Napoleon surrendered at Waterloo, he was defeated at the Battle of Leipzig, where against his French forces came a combined army of the allies of Russia, Sweden, Prussia, which is most of Germany today, and Britain. And now Napoleon then rejected the peace terms that were agreed, and so they kept on fighting. Paris ended up being besieged, and that was when Napoleon did surrender the first time. And as a result, he was sent in exile to Elba. But he was allowed to choose where he wanted to go. So he picked the island of Elba because it was actually quite a beautiful island. It seemed a nice place to retire to. Even so, to come down from being the emperor and the man who was feared by all of Europe to just becoming the king of a little island, well, for Napoleon that was a bit of a come down. In fact, he attempted suicide on his way to Elba. It didn't work because the poison, he'd been carrying the poison ever since he'd nearly got captured by the Russians on his retreat from Moscow. And he'd had the poison for so long it had gone off. It had lost most of its effectiveness, so it just made him very sick, and that was it. So Napoleon ends up on Elba, not as a prisoner, but as a king. But he's in exile. He's not supposed to go back again to anywhere else. And for nearly a year, he was the king of Elba, and by all accounts ruled it quite well. Beautiful island, beautiful scenery, beautiful crystal clear waters and everything else. I mean, if you're going to be exiled somewhere, Elba's a nice place to be exiled. Napoleon had it pretty good. Now, look, he'd been a danger. He had caused wars that had cost hundreds of thousands of lives, and yet, they didn't want to execute him. France had a history of bloodshed with the French Revolution and everything else. They didn't want to go back there. And so this was considered by everybody the best deal. Put him on a nice, easy exile out of the way where he can't do any harm. Well, he arrived there on this day, 4th of May in 1814, but they were wrong when they thought he couldn't do any harm, because he returned to France again. He raised up an army once more, and he started threatening Europe once again. So again, the Allies had to come and fight against him, and that was the Battle of Waterloo, and that's the one, of course, that ABBA did sing about, and Napoleon did surrender. Well, this time, they put him into exile again, but he wasn't allowed to go back to Elba as a king anymore. He was sent as a prisoner to the island of St. Helena, which was a horrible, disease-ridden place, a really difficult place. And he was sent there, and his health worsened, and he finally died. Because what the Allies had discovered was this, that when you had somebody as troublesome as Napoleon, taking the easy option and just put him in Elba and saying, he won't do anyone any harm again, was not good enough. They had to keep an eye on him. And you and I have things in our lives that we have to keep an eye on. We have things that used to dominate our lives before we came to Jesus. And by the grace of God, God has set us free from those things. But we can never presume that we won't be tempted by those things anymore. And so we can't afford to just say, I used to do that, but don't have to worry about that anymore, it won't do me any harm. We need to realize that some things may do us harm. And so we need to be strict with ourselves. We need to be disciplined with ourselves. We have to say, no, I'm not going back into those habits. I'm not going to be like that anymore. Recently, I lost a whole load of weight, okay? I used to be very overweight, and I lost 6.5 stone, or about 45 kilos of weight. And feel much better, feel much healthier and everything else. Now, it'd be easy for me to just go back to eating like I was before and say, I've lost all that weight, I won't go back, I won't do myself that kind of damage again. But actually, I need to keep an eye on that. And so, for example, I got a photograph taken when I was in Africa back in 2014, and I look at it, and it's a real horrible looking photograph of me. It's up on my refrigerator now, so when I go When I go to the fridge, I see that photograph and I go, I'm going to make sure I don't get like that again. That's my version of going to St. Helena rather than going to Elba for a cushy number there. So I just want to encourage you, if you've had the victory over something, if God's made a big change in your life, don't allow yourself to go back to where you were before. Be disciplined. Be strict with yourself if necessary. Maintain the progress that God has made in your life, in whatever area of your life that might be, in Jesus' name. God bless you today. Join us again tomorrow for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.